Okay, folks, we're going to continue Peggy Miller Sterling stories. It's Friday the 17th, 2021. We're here at Peggy's house in McAllen, and she's going to give us another story here. So go for it, Peg.
Okay, this is a story about Brother John. I helped raise Brother John. He was still kind of a baby when we moved to the new house. So he's born when we live at our little house. And John was a special needs child. Mom had never had a special needs child. But he was born with a hernia. And so he couldn't get surgery until he was older. So he wore this leather brace to hold his intestines in. So we had to take special care of him. And Mom was pretty bad health when he was born. So really, I think Fanny and I helped take care of him by feeding him and changing his diaper and giving him baths. And we had to be extraordinary gentle. And Fanny always had the gentle hand. So we bathed him and changed his diaper, made sure he was clean, diaper powder, and that we pressed his intestines back and put this brace, leather, with a big ball on it that held his intestines in place, and we could finish changing his diaper. So it took tender loving care to raise John. And he was, in his little kid life, he hung on to his mother's. Her skirts were big, and he would wrap himself in her skirts and hang on to her leg, and her skirts seemed to protect him from whatever boogie bear was out there. So he clung to his mother, but we were there to assist him. And so he grew up to be this precious little boy. So everything he did growing up, I kept an eye on him all the time. How he had to struggle to get into the school bus to go to school. And how he goes to first grade and Fanny takes him by the hand and registers him. He's completely out of touch with the world of school. And so Fanny registers him and takes him to his room and leaves him. He's this terrified little first grader who doesn't hear very well. Nobody knows that he has a hearing problem too. He had it for most of his life. So at school he learned to sit in the front row at all times because he was reading his teacher's lips. If she didn't make the assignment for school, he was so smart that teachers never knew, because he couldn't turn in an assignment unless it was written on the chalkboard. Most of it was verbal. Read such and such, write such and such. But John never knows what they are saying as he grows from grade to grade as a poor student. When he is brilliant, he just can't study because he's not directed in what to study. Sitting on the first row of every class, begging his teacher to sit there where he can read her lips. He did not know what his problem was. Mom identified a hearing problem at some time, got him to San Antonio to a specialist. She did not take her children to San Antonio, Texas, but Mom took Brother John to a specialist in San Antonio to work on his hearing when he was a little boy. They never fixed him. So John grows up to have horrible things in his life, like glaucoma. He has these tremendous headaches. Linda said, in our marriage, I saw him holding his head with both hands in horrible pain. Dorothy goes to see him while he's having one of the surgeries, which was to freeze his eyeball, and he's screaming in agony out in the hall at the hospital in Houston, where Dorothy goes to check on her little brother. And they don't have a room for him. He's left out there in the hall with a frozen eyeball with all kinds of new hellish headaches. And he is silently screaming his guts out, and Dorothy shows up. "What are you doing to my little brother?" So, he has this unusual family of caregivers. They know a little bit of his pain. So as an adult, here are his caregiving brothers and sisters checking on him. It means so much to John, but he is so timid in his expression of love back for them that, he continues to live this high life of hellish problems. But he goes through college. He graduates from college, and like his brothers, he goes to sign up for the Army. So he gets on a bus load of people as volunteers to go join the Army. World War II is now over, but he is very much inclined to do what his brothers did. They went to service, got funding for their education, and came home and went through college on the GI Bill. Well, John goes in, so he's going to go in as an officer. So they welcome him with open arms, give him all these tests. He passes every test with flying colors. There are two guys on the bus. They're Anglo. Neither one of them can pass the test of physical. They both passed the written test, but their physicals were such that they couldn't go to the Army. John was deaf and blind. He can't go serve. So he comes home figuring, my God, I don't know what to do next, with his tail between his legs. Every brown kid goes into the service. The bus load is only 2 white children. And all the brown children go into the Army. The 2 white kids are both sent home, and they feel total disgrace. Now they can't serve their country. John says, now what do I do? I don't have a plan. My plan was going to officer candidate school. And here I am denied that as a college graduate. So, John has to reinvent his life at 21 years old or something like that. Now what? He gets married, he has a child, and he's figuring out his life as he goes along. But he is a very disciplined person. His math skills, his business management classes are all superb. So he can go manage anything, just where do I do it? So first it's pumps that he's familiar with, and he reinvents this store in McAllen very successfully, very, very busy. He answered every phone call coming in. He was extremely well-oriented with business. My place where I lived did business with John. So he helped us with our pumps, and he knew everything, the parts numbers, everything that you needed. So he was managing this place in what had been a poorly run place. The owner's son is quite jealous of John. So it's not the most happy place for the family, because these little boy character was John was taking his place, and he was not happy. John was there so successfully, making a great business run. So John is eventually fired because this young master, who's supposed to be running the place, is complaining to his dad all the time. So John loses his job there, not in disgrace because he was very successful. So John was easily hired by anybody because he had a business reputation already. He lives in Mission, so he goes and starts working with Weyerhaeuser, a box manufacturing company for agriculture. Well, John was a little boy in ag his whole life. You know, his calves were shown at the stock show for many years. So, you know, he was an agricultural kid. He fit into that box history because he knew what every box was waxed for fresh vegetables and not waxed for other and certain sizes. And by now, John is very bilingual. He can speak Spanish with the best of them. He grew up speaking Spanish with the ranch hands. Very bilingual. They loved having John work for him. So he started having sales clients down in Mexico where he could speak perfect Spanish and order all the right for these massive farms in Mexico where the product was shipped to the United States through the new programs that were set. And so the boxes that he sent down there came back to the United States to be distributed all over the United States. So he was doing quite well in his job. He was happy. And he was in his hometown, so, you know, he didn't have to travel extensively. His other work was in McAllen and much further. But John had these horrible headaches because of his eye, so he ends up losing his eyesight in his right eye. He was also deaf in his right ear. He never had a hearing aid that fit, still does not. So when John drives me on a trip, we love riding together because he can't hear me talk, but he has these wonderful stories to tell, and so we start traveling together to the cemetery at Schulenburg together because we're both seem to be involved in that cemetery creation and standards of care. So I start riding with he and Linda. Linda sits in the back seat. I sit in the passenger seat in front. John can't hear me because his right side can't see or hear me. So he's like Bruce's bantam rooster with his blind eye and not being able to hear me. So I listen to John's stories. He is full of stories, and he tells me stories all the way because I can hear every word. So he's telling me his life story about raising his kids. He's so close to his two sons. So, you know, how they took up tennis as a family. And Linda says, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be left to be a home mother. I've got kids to raise. So she and John take up tennis. He had already played tennis in college, but Linda had no skills at all. So she gets taught tennis, and they go off on these amazing tennis trips with their kids because they both become professional tennis players. So they end up going through college playing pro tennis at the country club. I mean, they were tennis pros. They're still and have the best time of their lives with their two sons. And so I get to hear all of these stories that I don't know from John. So John doesn't ever know my stories about mothering him as a baby. So I start sharing my stories of him and the brace. He knows nothing about a brace. He does not know that he had, I guess he knows he had surgery, but not when or how or, you know. So we have this great fun going on as brothers and sisters who are older. Our kids were raised, so we could talk about them. So I hear John Sterling stories, and I'm a happy camper having him drive. And so we go off because I'm always car sick. John is a great driver. He doesn't pump the brakes, and it's smooth sailing for me. He can drive me. Not everybody can. So anyway, we develop a great brother and sister relationship when they go down to Port Mansfield and have all these fishing boats, and he maintains every motor to perfection. Linda always has a sewing project that she's doing. She's recovering the leather in the boats when I go down there. She has her room, her sewing room, filled with different colors of leather, and these. She just does this amazing work with sewing machines. So I get to learn all about Linda to go out and sew. They look forward to my going down there to see the plants that John is raising. And then when COVID hits, they order these chickens, and I tell them Aunt Augusta chicken stories. So we're just sharing life stories all the time. And I begin to realize that my family does not know the same mother and father that I grew up with. So that's why I'm telling you these stories. So my brother John becomes a best friend, and we communicate well. And if I can come down, I call him and say, hey, what are you doing Sunday? Can I come for lunch? We always go out to lunch and have fresh fish at Port Mansfield. So we always go out to lunch. They have food enough to feed an army in their kitchen at all times. But we go out to eat so we can talk. And then after lunch, I go home where I've checked all of John's seed production of plants in his garden, checked the chickens, checked all Linda's stuff, and she's making this extraordinary quilts, pillowcases, embroidered with a special electronic sewing machine that she sits with her computers, and they take off making birds and butterflies on her beautiful new whatever she's making. And so we're very happy in our relationship, and so I want Brother John to know how important he has been in my life.
Good, Peg.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Brother John. So
Okay.
happy birthday on November 11th. You are 10 years younger than I am. In October, I'm 88. You will be 78 years old on November 11th. So I'm keeping track.
88 years young. Way
Yeah.
to go, Peg.
Yeah.
Let me see.